Who's present?
Larry, do you need notes on these meetings? Because Candy needs me to take notes on these meetings. She usually asks.
Absolutely.
Forgot how to work this, you can use this.
No, I never get this right. I'm not allowed to one over that.
I have a question, so in the future, does it seem right to make people who are just gonna be presenting their budgets wait this long just to present their budget?
You know,
Shouldn't we do that before the regular meeting?
absolutely, and the chair apologizes for that, I didn't realize.
Normally,
Very good idea.
in the past, we've tried to make the commissioners' meetings end by 6 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
That's been,
Another way to do it too.
yeah, that's been.
Mr. Chair,
Again, the chair
It
apologizes.
should have been.
I would suggest though that we actually, commission meetings are important, as are the budget committee. I would suggest we do the budget committee first so that we don't limit, because I have some real grave concerns about, and I'm sure we've had to rush a commissioner meeting and important discussion and a vote in order to make sure we get to another meeting. So I would just suggest instead, I would respectfully suggest to the chair that we schedule the budget committee meeting first. So then we have the
And
time
that's
to
all.
deliberate whatever needs to be done.
Well, that's what we'll do next 2 weeks from now, we'll have the budget meeting. We have a budget meeting 2 weeks from now?
We have budget meetings.
We have a budget meeting every week.
2 weeks from now, let's see, next week, the budget, and 2 weeks from now is the public hearing on the budget.
Okay, so we'll have the commission meeting after.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it is, and very, kind to get those schedules of people that are coming in to speak to us, although we are very riveting. I'm sure they're.
That's why we have a big crowd here tonight. I guess. Once again, the chair apologizes for the. First item on the agenda, item 4, commissioners.
I'm over it.
Okay, this is going to be relatively quick. The first line of salaries is already wrong because we need to add $600 to it, based on what you did a few minutes ago. And then as we go down, I reduced the secretarial services by $1,000. I eliminated the,
Mr. Chair, where is, which tab are you speaking of, Mr. Post?
The county commissioners,
2021,
20, isn't it?
2021.
no,
1020.
1020.
Oh, 1020, okay.
And also, this year we had $5,000 in the bicentennial. We spent about 900. We're going to carry that over for the next year. Apparently that they're going to have that, but we don't need to budget it for next year. So that decreased it. If you get down to the bottom of 195,599, add 600, should be 196,199. And that is, last year's was 199,109. So it's a reduction of about $3,000.
Questions for the administrator regarding the county commissioners?
Mr. Chair. In the effort to try to flatline, I would suggest that we turn that 5,000 back into the budget to help take some of the edge off at this point.
That is,
We're not voting on this budget, right? Just discussing it.
we're just discussing.
No, but I would suggest is, by doing this now, we can actually give the heads up that this is what we're aiming to do, so that when we actually get to the budget vote, we can actually make sure these things happen.
All right, so
But we have
there's an
the,
interest.
but we have the expense for next year, correct? 2021.
There will be some expense to,
If the commission so chooses to expend that amount of money, maybe we choose to set it at 1,000 instead, and we put 4,000 back into the budget to help take the edge off the taxpayers.
That's
I
what
think
the vice
most of them will
president-
benefit by us cutting costs everywhere we can, more than having a float go by.
Or maybe cutting
If,
it by
if,
half.
if there's even a parade to be held.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Roy.
if I understand the administrator correctly, what he's saying is they want to carry forward the unexpended from the 5,000, which would be like 4,100 and some odd dollars, which would be in the, essentially set aside as a reserve, and so it wouldn't affect how much we're raising in taxes. It would just simply be part of the fund balance that they would then expend later. I believe we as a commission we approve what gets carried forward outside of the budget process. That's an annual thing that we do after the year is finished. We say, well, we approve to carry forward these unexpended appropriations from that point.
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that there must be a mechanism though for us to actually have that put back into the budget. Or we could
put it back into the
respectfully direct Mr.
But then you're
Post to
raising
put it.
for.
No, but I mean, if you put it in the sense of if there's surplus from last year and we're setting our surplus from this year, we're able to use that against next year's budget.
Yeah,
I would
that's what he suggests.
Instead of spending that money next year, we're using it to soak up other costs, not
I see.
fair, not a,
He said,
not a flow.
so basically you're saying you don't want to carry it forward.
Yes, if we're able to use that to apply it to keep the costs down. These are where we can hit 5,000 here, 100 here, 10,000 there. It adds up. Thank you.
Just to make sure we understand, what he's essentially saying is let's move that money, individual lines into next year's budget to help offset the budget. Individual lines that don't get carried forward get put into fund balance. And the fund balance amount, I have increased for the fund balance that we use for next year's budget. I increased from 200,000 to 230,000. Quite frankly, I didn't want to do that, but I did that to help keep the budget down. And so, money that's in particular lines that we may not spend, that will go into the fund balance, which then goes into that increase that I'm using to help offset the budget.
Yes, that's what he suggested. But we have to approve how much is carried forward. Chair actually did that. This budget seems fine.
Mr. Chairman, we actually read through the entire budget yet.
This budget in front of us, Commissioner.
Thank you.
The 5,000, by the way, if the phrase gets put back on, I could see that being something we could raise privately. I had offered way back before the thing disappeared on us to participate in calling some of the businesses and saying, would you like to make a flow, that kind of thing. So I'm guessing we can replace that without it being in our budget. I'll make a donation, not the $5 grand, but I'll make some too. For instance, so we could see making that disappear. Other questions? Budget for the administrator?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner?
could I just ask, what all are we doing with furniture? What exactly needs to be expended? Or not furniture, I'm sorry, that's zero. Mr. Chairman, I was confused on the lines.
So, we're not taking a vote right now on anything. We're not taking a vote on anything right now. So, are we ready to move on to human services? Let's do so. Human services, 1021.
Okay, this one is exactly the same as last year. The contractual services, $500, the medical, surgical, and no, that is when we hire somebody, we send them for physicals, and so that's what pays that. Psychological exam, if we hire a patrol person, they have to go through that. That actually pays only for one, and there's concern we may need to do it for two, but anyway. And then training, that is Every year Sandy gets the books and so on that she has to go through and make sure that we're up to date on what it is we need to do.
Good. Any questions on human services? Let's move on to AvCog, 2002.
AvCog representative is not here tonight. They did present a request. It was 73 or 74 something. I upped it to 75 because they finally make their next year's adjustments in December. And so they don't know exactly what that's going to be yet. And my guess was 75. They, in their packet, you have an amount or a narrative of what it is that they do, and so on. And I'm sure that perhaps Commissioner Medora can enlighten us further if there are other questions. But again, being a regional organization, us being a regional organization, and they have a little bigger area. But some of the things that they're doing right now is helping businesses, for example, to they've gotten several grants from the government to be able to help businesses get back on their feet, and a number of things that is going on.
Thank you. Any questions on the AvCog?
Mr. Chair, have we benefited at all from AdCog at this point? Have we received any benefits?
I was gonna ask the same question.
We'll go ahead.
This is a tough year to even try to answer that question, because obviously right now, as they're helping businesses in Androscoggin County, and there's several other things that they're doing, and I should have brought the email up that Amy sent me that, is going on for regional help that they're doing. But obviously, this year is a tough year for everybody to try to, what have we accomplished or gotten? And so I'll just leave it at that.
Maybe assemble some of that for next discussion on this before we vote. A lot of people would like to be thrifty, but sometimes you can be paying lots of possible.
Exactly.
Maybe the benefits exceed the cost.
Yeah, more detail would be appreciated. This is the one of the items that I had a difficult time with last year. And it would be beneficial and helpful to know exactly, how we benefited, how our citizens have benefited through our membership in the organization, and how we utilize their services.
And one of the things that, and I told you last year that I've had experience with another council of governments, and sometimes what happens is a lot of things go in cycles, where one of the things that used to drive me absolutely crazy was when a town would be a member of the COG and they would get something. They would get a grant or get something because they were a member. And then as soon as they got theirs, they would drop their membership. Well, sometimes, individual towns or in this case counties get something this year and not next year because it makes it circle. And so the advantage is to be part of the group that we're all working together for the same purpose. So I'll leave it at that.
Sure.
Yeah, I would just like to make a note that in addition to potential direct benefits of the county, AvCog also provides, benefits that indirectly help the county or directly help county residents. And I think it's important to remember that when we're considering the value of the organization.
Any further discussion? Hearing none? Move on to Emergency Management Agency. You find a cure for COVID yet?
Not yet.
All right.
That's her next week's assignment.
Okay.
Good evening. Before I discuss the budget, I would like to introduce the new Deputy Director, Paul Leonard.
Oh, Leonard, very good.
Yeah.
Welcome.
So he comes to Androscoggin County EMA with a lifetime's worth of experience. In the past, Paul has served in multiple amateur radio service organizations for county and local government in California and Maine. He has served in a number of different roles, to name a few: emergency coordinator for the city of Santa Clara, California, a member of the Silicon Valley Emergency Communications Service for Santa Clara County. And Paul currently is a member of the Androscoggin County Amateur Radio Service and, bear with me, Androscoggin County Radio Amateur Civil Emergency Service. Not bad. I'll hand this over to Paul for questions and comments before I begin with the budget, if you have any for him, or you just like to welcome.
We just welcome him. You can join Angela if you want.
He's shy,
Shy.
but he can come
Paul,
in.
what's your last name?
Leonard.
Paul Leonard, okay. You know, with those qualifications, you're making us all look bad.
Been doing this a long time.
So our communication problems we have in Androscoggin County with the hills and the mountains are something you are very well equipped.
Oh, well aware of,
Yeah,
yes.
sounds like you've got a lot of experience in that. That's
Our
great.
hills are, well, what we call hills are what you guys call mountains sometimes. But, yeah, it's definitely an issue that we have there too.
Anything else for Paul? Okay, thank you. So my name is Angela Molino. I'm the Director of Androscoggin County EMA, here to present the department's budget this evening to the commissioners. Essentially, the department is in the same budget position as the previous year. This year, we're at 219,225. The only real change is that we are requesting a new vehicle that has the capacity to tow the existing trailers that the department has. By reducing and or eliminating line items, we were able to keep the budget increase to $259. This is an increase of 0.99%. And are there any questions?
Christmas.
Angela, how often are you in a situation where you need to tow trailers? Is it something that happens often, or is it like an emergency situation only, or?
No, it's for emergency situations. It's also, they would be used more if we had the capability. Right now, we rely on volunteers. I'm uncomfortable with that because they're not covered under the county policy. So we really limit that, but they would be used more for our special team events, field day events, the balloon festival, trying to think of all the festivals, the Moxie Festival, I'm blanking right now. Dempsey Challenge, Beach Tub Weekend. He knows this because he's involved in those every year. It's part of the special teams. So they would be used more. So unfortunately, they're not used a lot right now. Also, we have requested in our application a very large low command trailer because vehicles are now prohibited through HSGP this year. And so we're asking for a trailer instead.
This is through a grant.
The grant, yeah. And so we would need a vehicle to haul that as well.
Sure. Could you just explain what you mean by that? It's something, you can't have like something that's built, it can't be like a bus or something that's like a RV or something. It can't be that sort of thing, it has to be a trailer, is that what you're saying?
No, it's just this year, every year they come out with allowable items and those and sometimes unallowable items.
Mhm.
And so in this year's grant, and I don't know, I can't foretell in the future.
Yep.
it's not allowed. And it seems like it probably won't be allowed in the future.
So we have to
Vehicle
get rid of a
purchases.
piece of equipment we already have, is what you're saying.
Nope, nope, I'm requesting a vehicle in the budget. It's not allowed with, the grant funding.
I see.
But the
Sure,
purpose
so
of that is that we're
yeah.
adding another trailer. The
Okay.
reason why I mentioned it.
The other, to follow up on that, her budget is partially funded through the state FEMA. So roughly half of what her budget is reimbursed.
Sure. Actually, I wanted to ask about that. So can you speak to that EMA matching funds? I thought they were 50.
It's 50%? Yeah.
So
Well, okay, it's,
why is it
it's a
140?
50 match. Huh?
So my question is, if we're only budgeting 219,000, but it's supposed to be a 50% match, shouldn't that be
No,
110,000?
part of it is because of benefits, which aren't in her budget.
Oh, I got it. Thank you. Yep, that makes sense.
Thank you. So I think what I'm looking at in terms of the money you're looking for the motor vehicles, $10,000. Is that, are you gonna try to budget that over 2 years and get like a slightly used truck, or is that, or am I misreading $10,000 is the number?
So, Larry and I spoke, and it would be the same type of agreement that we had for, the car. And that was over a 4-year period. It was a lease to own agreement.
Sure. Will this be put up to bid?
Yes. And I'll work with Clary's for that.
I'd like to see if we could try to bid statewide so that we could give the best opportunity for the taxpayers, or even out of state if necessary.
So what is a $40,000 vehicle get you for in terms of what you're looking for?
I'm looking for a 3/4 ton truck with it's not called a short bed, but it's not a standard bed. I'm not well versed.
Is $40,000 enough for a 3/4 ton
It's
truck?
about 38, 39. I mean, I've kind of done a rough, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I have looked around. So it's about 38, 39.
Sorry, currently, what is the $4,700 go to right now on the vehicle line?
Oh, that was to pay the last payment of the car.
So this would be the second vehicle for your department?
Nope, that vehicle actually is going to be dispositioned to the sheriff's department.
Sure. So will that vehicle be replaced by the truck, or will we be putting in for another vehicle in the future?
No, that
Very near
vehicle's
future.
being replaced by the truck.
Okay.
It's a more useful vehicle, I think, than a 4-passenger car without towing capability.
Further questions for Ms. Molino or Mr. Leonard? Commissioner?
Just a comment, could you kind of mention, from our conversations in the past, it sounds like your when you joined us in your department, there were a lot of, just like pretty much every other place in Edgecote County, but your department specifically, there was a lot of deferred maintenance in terms of whether it's the room that you guys are in or the equipment and whatnot. And what I'm seeing here is there's a minor kind of step to that, but what are we deferring this year when we're looking at this in terms of the things that you saw that you needed?
The communications room, Commissioner Larry, do you remember the back room?
Yes, yeah.
So that has been deferred, and it requires significant updates. not only just the room itself, the wiring, the conduit, the desktop is not, trying to say, you can't pull up and sit underneath it. I guess people were smaller back then, but they kind of hit your knees. It's really, we need to, I guess, update the equipment as well. That's wiring. We have a rodent situation. It's not pretty, but we name all of them George. And their favorite place is that nice warm cozy room back there. They love chewing on the wiring. There's something sweet to it, right?
Tastes like sugar.
Tastes like sugar. So
Oh,
we
that's how you know that.
Hmm?
Oh, that's how you know that.
So we suspect that there's damage. Some of the radios aren't working because of that. Some of the equipment isn't working because of that. And so we have discussed a few times with a vendor, going back and forth, going over plans in the future with Dave. But that has been deferred because it is going to be a very large expense. But
$250,000. That's okay, you know.
I hope not.
All right.
We have been able to update the department though, because of savings, with people retiring or, how do I, with the grant and with other grants, Dave's thriftiness, like there was, he had leftover paint from another project, painted downstairs. That made a huge difference. Everyone thought we replaced everything just with the paint. With an agreement with the city, you were able to get bulbs,
Yeah.
right? Update the lighting, which made a huge difference, and it was just updating the bulbs. What else? Seating, tables, other furniture to hold maps, to hold our equipment. And it was all through other grants and not the budget. So we've been able to do what we can. And I welcome any of you to come down.
Ms. Molino,
Yes.
you mentioned some of the issues, and I've heard that is the same problem with cars, is the environmentalists, the stuff made out of bio-based or, food-based plastics, so now it's chewy and tasty. But I guess my real question is, what is, I realize you can't guarantee, but are you professionally confident that the equipment back there will work in an emergency, or is this something we need? I don't want to spend any more money than we have to, but this is an area I'm more not eager to spend any money, but that's an area that if we need to make sure that communications continue, I want to make sure that link's there, not other things that I've spoken out against it. Are you reasonably confident? Are you what level, or is there an inspection that needs to take place by some sort of a professional? And I don't mean that, and I just mean it. A computer,
A specialist.
electrical guru, or
Yeah,
electrical expert from there.
Yep. We had an assessment done by the vendor my first year, like the first 3 or 6 months, just to see where we were at with that comm room, because I am not a communication specialist, and it's in a bad situation. We do have the ability to communicate with the state and LA and the comm center and the county, and we check those. And so we do have that ability. I put a lot of effort into the special teams, which is our volunteers, and we will heavily rely on the dispatch centers and our special teams if something happens, but it's not ideal.
So you do have the redundancy at this point if something does fry itself, or, I have great confidence in Mr. Cody and his team to be able to bring that back up. But I realize there's only so you can't make a radio, not today's day and age. So where are we at? I guess I'm not bucking at all to spend money, but if there's an issue where we need to make sure that public safety is protected, I can support that. Is this something where we should have that expert come back before we finish this budget cycle?
There is a plan in the future to have that vendor or another come back and have another assessment and go over the plans again, because we're reconsidering our original intent with that room. We are not a PSAP, so that's the 2 dispatch centers, so the public safety will be taken care of. It's more of the
Okay, so
communities
that's
and
not at
their
risk.
ability to communicate with us. But like I said, we'll heavily rely on the dispatch centers. And so it's a Band-Aid.
The only other thing I would just like, as a commissioner, be able to, or I can only speak for myself, not the commission, but just to know about these sort of rodent issues or that sort of an issue, earlier on, just so we're aware of it, so that we could consider it budget-wise next time in the future.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that it?
You did a great job keeping us updated throughout the
Oh.
Yeah.
late winter and spring. I mean, it just seemed like once a week or twice a week emails from you, and I appreciate that. And then we sat back there during the budget committee meeting, sorry, chairman of the budget committee, whispering, and I was saying, did you, back then, we thought you'd just gotten bombarded with so many emergencies your first year on the job, had no idea what was coming ahead of you, but you've kept us updated every step of the way. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. It has been a challenge. It seems like it comes faster than we can get the information out, and by the time I can get it out, there's all new information, so it's been a race, so.
I took up on a lot of the invitations to the telecommunication seminars with Washington and like that, listened in on them while I was working, and I appreciate that. I've never had the opportunity to do that in the
Oh.
past, so.
They were very interesting.
Yeah,
huh?
they were.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed that. I did.
All right, thank you, Angela, thank you,
Thank
Paul.
you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Next is facilities.
Hello, everybody. So my budget is mostly been flat funded. There's only a handful of items that I did ask for. Obviously, cost of living and steps have been included. But going on down, electrical repairs are one that I did increase. That's percentage-wise, that's the most I've asked for. That's only an extra $1,000. The elevator has been, seems to be going pretty smooth the past 2-3 years. We haven't been spending the full allotment, so I figured I'm going to try to decrease it this year, and we'll see how that fares. The software hardware maintenance, which is the 4675 line, I did increase that to 4,600, and that's to cover an additional computer and to replace an old one. And then next year to come, so for 2022, I'm going to ask for 2 more computers. Then my department will be up to date for the next 5 years. Let's see. Agriculture, 5305, had to go up $50. Just stuff goes up. I can't get the mulch at the price I used to get. We used to be able to get it by dump truck load. Now we go get it with the pickup. So when you get small loads versus a huge bulk, price is significantly different. So I'm going to go up a little bit more to help cover some of that. Uniforms and clothing, because we have an extra person, I just go up a little bit to help offset the increase in personnel. Tools and implements, 5610, I did go up an additional $1,000. Our table saw is from the mid to late 70s. It doesn't have any safeties that we're supposed to have in today's codes. Though it's a nice table saw, we like it. You should have the ones that meet all the latest safety requirements. The last one would be the capital improvement. Do you have a chance to look at that one at all? The capital improvement, we're looking at doing another $10,000 for flooring. I'm gonna try to continue that until we hopefully catch up and get all the floors up to date. Either replace the worn out ones, remove all and any old asbestos that we may find, and put new flooring. Roofing, again, we have a lot of roofs in this place. I'm gonna tackle each roof. I'm having a allotment of 50,000 each year. If I spend the full 50, so be it. If I don't spend the full 50, I would like to roll the additional over the following year. Some roofs are bigger, some roofs are smaller, so it's, some are less, some are more. But obviously, I'll wait till we have a little bit more than 50,000 for bigger roofs. I'm gonna try to tackle the smaller roofs. Like this year, we got this roof above us taken care of. Next year, I'd like to take care of the roof beside it, taken care of. It's not leaking yet. When you walk on it, it's like a sponge. So it definitely has some issues. And that's a lot of the roofs. Exterior doors, a lot of the exterior doors are old wooden doors and they're kind of dry. So we would like to replace those with modern day doors that will hopefully keep people out if need be. And then $8,000 to go into the reserve account. So we have an allotment set aside, we can purchase a new plow truck. That's basically it.
Mr. Cody, questions?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
1040, county building, 7205 is the last item, 74,000. What are you planning for on that?
Yeah, that was what I just went over, that was the capital
Okay,
improvement.
that's, so the 50,000 is part of that?
Yes,
Okay, and that's 6,000 for the more secure doors and things like that? Okay.
and they're all totals up to the 74,000.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's what I was getting thrown on. Okay. Mr. Cody, I know we discussed in the past about budgets and stuff, and you mentioned that, there's the stuff that's the needs, there's the stuff that's the wants, and there's the nice to haves. Knowing you, I would presume that we've probably already gotten rid of those other items and just gone back to the needs. But is that the case, or are there other areas that there's some things that will be nice to have at this point, but could be cut in addition? I appreciate that.
I mean, the only thing-
we've been doing, but it just.
The table saw is the teeter-totter one.
Hmm.
We could just continue going with what it is, but at some point we need to get it. This year, next year, the year after.
Until Lucia shows up.
Until OSHA shows up and we get that.
So it is an OSHA issue though.
It is. We've added components to try to bring it up to code, but you're constantly adding and adding and adding to a 40-year-old device.
Okay.
Okay, we only duct tape so much.
That's Gorilla Tape now.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Because you right off the table saw, you can get one that prevents it from cutting off your finger.
That's only a specific model.
Yeah.
Table saw that has that. I don't know yet. I'm leaning towards a commercial version that has all the safeties, the electronic shut-offs. If we lose power, it will not turn back on. So I don't know about that one you're talking about. I've seen the infomercials. I'm not gonna test it if we do get that one.
It worked.
Mr. Chair, could we, I'd like to ask if we could look at cutting the flooring, that's an area, unless it's, I assume we've had asbestos audit at this point, so we know where all the,
Nope.
okay.
You don't know when you get to that part. There was one area we're looking at now, which is the civil entrance. There's 4 layers of flooring. We have the bottom layer that has the asbestos.
Okay, so in other words, so it's not, a severe risk to, staff or public health, being that it's 4 layers thick.
It's not any risks. What it is that I don't want to leave it to my successor later on in life.
No, understood. I guess I'm just saying that this is a time when a lot of people are, yes, there's some people that are buying extra things for their homes, but
Sure.
those are probably the ones that are still employed. But those that are not, I would just suggest that this would be a good time for us to skip that for this year, and hopefully the economy gets better next year. And that's a $10,000 savings where we could, the roof, yeah, I'd love to wait on that, but that one I can understand, we have to, that's this whole thing, my dad even talked, that's the first part you gotta protect. So I would suggest maybe we skip that 10,000 on the flooring, and we can defer that till next year.
Just keep in mind, we've been doing that for a lot of years.
True,
And-
we've actually done great strides.
We have.
This commission has done quite a lot in many expenditures, many of which I'm opposed to. So I would say that that's not totally the case anymore.
It isn't, I just want to go back to that mindset.
Back on my safety thing there, I would encourage you to look at that. I want to make sure you guys keep all your fingers.
Oh, me too. I've already lost it.
Larry
Years
included.
ago.
It's not all that bad.
I'm sorry. One of the things I noticed with your budget, and I always kind of talk about this, is it seems abundantly clear to me when you go to the building and you look at it, that Androscoggin County commissioners have underinvested with capital improvements over time. And I think what we have done, or what you have done over the past many years has been, is definitely noticeable. But we have an old building, and we've been keeping that budget very low for many years, and to some extent, perhaps at our detriment when we talk about things such as the boiler and whatnot. So I just want to say that it's not lost on me. I want to remind everyone of all these, the hole we've sort of dug, commission has dug itself over time in terms of what is needed.
Any more? Thank you much, sir.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
IT,
Good evening.
good evening.
You'll all go easy on me, it's my first go around.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
I
I
already
appreciate
got your name, what is it?
it. My name is Doug Butler, I'm the
Doug.
IT director. Been on staff since June 1st, so what is it, 70 days, something like that, Who's counting? 75 days. Thank you. I'm here to talk about the number that sticks out on the spreadsheet that Larry shared with us at a recent meeting of 36.08% year-on-year increase. I'm here to tell you some other categories that I think justify those numbers and why I put those requests in my proposed budget. They broadly, they speak to three different categories. One is baseline deferred absent maintenance. Commissioner Medora listened very intently to your comments just a few moments ago. I think that's germane in this area as well. The second category is security and risk mitigation. There are things that are not present in the environment right now that ought to be, in my opinion. And that's an area where I've requested some items for expenditures that weren't present prior years. And then the third category is efficiency and continuity. So for example, things like that make me more able as a shop of one person servicing more than 100 employees to do that work in an efficient way so that we can keep that headcount low and keep some of those requests for additional support as minimal as possible in future years. The first line item is salary. I think Larry, I defer to you if you have any comment on that.
My comment is, we have hired a person who is more than qualified to do what he's doing, and obviously, and he has, as you know, in the past, Dave has been director, and we had an IT tech. To be perfectly honest, when I hired Doug, this is what he's getting now, and so instead of hiring him at a lesser rate, but we're just not going to give him a raise next year. We'll see if we can keep that up for the future years, but but bottom line is from the past, we've had to increase simply to increase our expertise. Not that there was anything wrong with what had been going on before, but we have upped the game.
Mr. Chair. So
Should I?
is the current salary what's in the 2021 request? Or is it what's in the 2020 budget?
The salary in the 2020 budget was, you've got two parts of salary. You had the old position, and then you've got the new position.
Okay.
And then there was a spread in between where we didn't have.
Okay, so you're looking at not increasing next year.
Yes, thank you. Would you, so you talked about that you thought there were more security measures that that you see are needed, and that was part of the increase. Would you speak more about that?
Absolutely. I think if I may, as I get to each individual cost center account numbers, I think I may be able to satisfy some of those questions, if that's all right. Okay. The next budget account code number 4015 consulting. This is an area where in the current year, I think you see that there's been an excess in expenditures compared to the plan, and that's, I think, it speaks to before my arrival, but it's relying on consulting services to cover the gap while there was an absence in the department. I think that's kind of the explanation for that. Next year, I do anticipate, or I've requested in this budget proposal, 2 different projects that would be primarily services of outside engineering support, outside technical support, to assist with carrying those projects off where I don't have the expertise necessary to do it myself. And those are computer imaging. And this goes into the category that I mentioned at the outset of efficiency and continuity. Currently, we don't have a standard set of configurations for the machines that we have out in the field, and that does 2 things. One, it makes it a lot less efficient to maintain them, and then 2, if a security risk does come along, it makes me much less able to react to that security risk because I don't know what's out there. So both of those aspects are included in that. The next item in there that's an expense is $4,000 for some engineering labor to do what's called network segmentation. If you have any familiarity with the Target breach that happened a number of years ago, this is directly aimed at that sort of risk. Target's network was one big giant flat network. They didn't have it carved off so that the HVAC vendor could only get to the HVAC things and the point of sale vendor could only get to the point of sale things. This is what that expenditure is aimed towards.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Mr. Butler, could you explain where on the budget I'm kind of lost trying to understand?
I'm trying to fill in some of the blanks. I've got more of my own notes from my own spreadsheet that I used to prepare the.
Okay, so it's not in here.
Correct. Okay. And I'd be happy to share with the commissioners.
If I could have a copy of that
Sure.
later, or if it can be sent to the whole commission, that would be great.
And then the third line item, or the third expenditure in that area, which is the bulk of the $22,000 increase, is I have worked with Larry to propose putting out to bid for a block of 8 hours per month of engineering support, so that I could have an engineer come in and be with me 1 day a month to A, consult with on routine projects, but B, also have a backup person who's familiar with the environment in the event that I'm out of the picture or unavailable. There's more of a continuity kind of a thing. So the idea is to go out to bid and see what price we can get. My estimation is that costs about $175 an hour. If you do the math out, that's a $16,000 budget request, $16,800 budget request. Other than that, the line item is fairly flat from the prior year. In fact, it's identically flat from the prior year, $2,000. And stop me if you like, or I'll keep on going.
Mr. Chair, is that under IT consulting?
Yes, that's all under IT consulting. On what I'm trying to explain is the increase from $3,000 in the 2020 budget to $25,250 that I've requested in the 2021 budget.
But you're saying, from my understanding, that it's the same as last year, and I don't.
What I was suggesting was that the remaining $3,000, what's been occurring in that account previously is unplanned consulting for things that we didn't know were going to happen, that we had to get some outside support. We had to pay per hour for that support. And there will still be that, unfortunately. There'll still be some things that I wasn't expecting to happen that I'll need to pick up the phone and call a vendor and pay them to help us out. The next line item is relatively flat, although it doesn't look so on paper. The budget line item for telephone, 4315, went from nominally $800 in 2020 to $3,800 in 2021, which doesn't sound like a flat item until you realize that what I've done there is I've taken $3,000 that was previously under 4670, which is service contracts. I've taken the cost of internet service and placed it instead of telephone, which is, from my experience, where most commonly that expense resides. Usually telephone is telephone and data, in my experience. And so I moved that $3,000 from one to the other. Lease agreement, I don't know what that was. It didn't even show up. That didn't even show up on us. It was a lease agreement that didn't have any budget last year and doesn't have any budget this year. So equipped with that. Repairs to equipment is a nominal increase from 5,700 to 6,250, and that is based on experience in the current year-to-date costs, expenditures, plus about a 10% that I anticipate just an increase in costs in the next year. 4670 is service contracts, and that was a line item that was used for several different areas previously. My detail page, I'll tell you a little bit more about that. That includes things like Microsoft Office 365, or now it's called Microsoft 365, which is our hosted Exchange email. It includes things like Zoom. It includes a tool called LogMeIn Pro, which is a remote support tool that we use. It includes web hosting. This current year's expenditures include something called Panda Endpoint Protection, which is our cloud-based endpoint management for antivirus and patching. I'm proposing to switch that over to Microsoft solution if I can make a pilot project work on that. It'll potentially save us some money in different areas. It includes software assurance on the Mitel phone system, and it does include a couple of things that are new. One of them being something that was in that category of maintenance that was overlooked or deferred or not carried forward previously, and that's VMware, which is our virtual infrastructure software layer. And the additional thing that I added on, to of $450 per year, is a cloud-based password management software that gets us out of the insecure mode of having a lot of passwords that only one person knows, and it's written on a piece of paper underneath somebody's keyboard. We're working on, and David can speak a little bit about that. We're working on sharing all of those passwords in a secure online portal for continuity in case something happens.
We know that's been an issue here before.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I can show you a photo of a piece of paper that was handed to me on the first day of my job that would make a lot of people's hair stand up. Those of you who do have hair. Hardware and software maintenance. This is purely renewing or purchasing maintenance and support on what I would term to be critical items that were not maintained in prior budgets. If I can get to that line, I'll put in a couple of examples. SonicWall Firewall. There's $3,000 of new maintenance on HP switches. I hope you all, without being told, would trust me that your core networking equipment is pretty important to your operation. And we currently have no outside support on. We do have manufacturer warranty on this equipment, but we don't have any outside support with any kind of service level commitment or contract on the timing to replace or anything like that. So I'm requesting $3,000 to cover that. There's additionally maintenance on VMware vSphere, which is again that item that I mentioned a moment ago. It's the maintenance part of that. And the backup software called Veeam. In total, that's all comes to $8,885.60 that wasn't in any allocation in 2020. I did request in under 4930 registration enrollment. I requested support an increase of $2,500 to support me taking a class. I haven't exactly negotiated with Larry which one makes the most sense, but more than likely, I believe we have important capabilities in our SonicWall Firewall that we can't leverage because we don't have knowledge. And I'd like to getting training on that platform so that I can leverage that fully. And I'm going to just briefly tell you that office supplies and computer supplies are not largely changed. And I'll skip down to computer software and hardware, where that's down a little bit, but that's in fact interesting because the server replacement project, which I think you're probably all aware of, we actually are a little bit higher than we would have been under the last year's budget. I understand it was $21,000 or $25,000 planned for the next 4 years. We were able to work with Dell, and the cost of a 5-year lease on new equipment is $25,000 in the first year, and then $35,000 for the remaining 4 years. And this will bring us up to where we need to be. We don't have to rely on the E911 center's equipment anymore. We'll have a fully resilient, reliable virtualization stack for ourselves. I look forward to, and I'm sure David does as well, having you all have a chance to come and tour the new server room downstairs when it's finished. I think you'll see that it puts us in the stage where we ought to have been for some time.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Items like the training, the $2,500 training program for firewall education. It's not $1 million or anything, but just wondering why. Is it that specialized that you gotta go take a specific training from someone? It's not something you pick up on the internet.
I'm the first person that would be one to admit that Google is your friend in the IT business. You know, there are people that won't admit that, but I'll tell you that that's true. That if you have a problem that you want to find out about, you can spend your time and do your research. I would also tell you that the types of issues that we're facing, for example, the CGIS requirements, the possibility of wanting to use the FIPS 400 Federal Information Protection Standards, those are areas that are not likely to be something that I would have the confidence to do from self-learning by internet research.
Fair enough.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
So this is not about the current employee, it's about the position itself. I remember we discussed this position, adding this position or a different position, I think IT tech, back in 2017. And I had asked, or I believe I expressed interest in knowing what the amount would be if we had done this via consulting. I am speaking of the position, not the person, because they have no influence in this matter, but I'm deeply concerned that now, and I was told, you do the math. I don't think I really got the numbers requested, or it was late in the game. My concern is now we're at this level. We do have a position, and we're looking at massive cost increases. And the idea was, well, we can't hire consulting help because it's so expensive, and now we're doing this and consulting. And I feel that this is the same thing over and over again. If we make this expenditure now, and then we'll be better off later, but the returns never come. And if you're a stockholder or an investor or even a gambler, you wouldn't continue to go that way unless you're addicted to spending.
Commissioner Woodall?
Thank you. I think it's difficult for us and for the public to get a grip on exactly everything that you are asking for. And I think the deferred maintenance thing is you just sort of imagine that. But when you're, with all the items that you've discussed, tell us some of the areas of concern that you have and that has prompted you to try to, bring us into the mainstream with a lot of these items.
If I understand your question, one of the priorities that I've observed in my first, say, 75 days is that kind of approach with the question you've asked. I'd say the maintenance on the network, not having a contract on your Ethernet network, which everything relies on, is a big one. That's a small, relatively small number. There are a number of other areas. The fact that we only have a single firewall, that if that firewall should fail, then the time that we would be down would probably not be acceptable to either the sheriff's office or to the commissioners. I'm guessing because I don't believe, had that discussion about what's a risk assessment for tolerable outage to these services, but that's based on my best judgment. That's where I'm looking for single points of failure currently that aren't covered or don't have a maintenance contract, or we only have one of something. And then the area is really just about best practices that what I mentioned before about having the same standard image on all your computers, making sure that things are patched. Those are areas that I think I would categorize as the highest risk.
Mr. Chair. So I just request that, given what we're dealing with this severe issues coming economically, very likely, it would be prudent to do as much as we can in-house. We now have someone who's skilled in this area. So I would strongly encourage us to not go forward with this level of expenditures. I recognize that, yes, with that level of expertise comes the recognition of various risks and areas, but there's also the need for us to balance those costs out. And we have survived for a number of years. And I feel that there are always going to be new threats and we have to address them, but we also sometimes have to address things in a stepwise fashion over several years. And I strongly disagree with the idea that we just deferred maintenance for years. For 3.5 years, we've spent quite a lot as a budget, given most of what's been requested, other than the first year cutting about $50,000. We've basically gone with the same budget that's requested. So it's not deferred maintenance anymore. Thank you.
So I think we inadvertently cut Commissioner McGraw from the call.
That's okay.
Apologize.
I just more of a comment. I just, one of the things that I try to think about when, you know, because security, RT security, I talked to Dave briefly about this before, but we've seen a lot of government agencies literally, I mean, somewhat held hostage by, you could say cyber criminals or criminals in general. But beyond sort of those big or other catastrophic things that do happen, one of the things that was on my mind more was was our role in the justice system, whether it's the sheriff's department and the courts, and that we're all sort of tied in with that, especially the sheriff's department with ongoing investigations and the sensitivity to that. And you know, as we don't have, you know, a 1900s jail anymore. We have a jail with security cameras in every room and all that. So you know, that's just something that has been on my mind, and you know, it's hard for me to figure out where exactly that fits in this, but I think it's good to know that you know, broader perspective seems to be taken into consideration.
I think along with fiscal responsibility, I think that our constituents value knowing that their personal information is secure, you know, in a secure environment with, you know, current technology. What do you believe, you know, the current situation, you know, is as far as, you know, the threat, you know, of that information being compromised?
I haven't done a formal evaluation. There's a number of organizations that give you sort of self-assessment questionnaires and checklists that you can run through. The National Institutes of Science Standards for Technology is one of them. There's an organization like called SANS, I forgot what they call themselves now, Center for Internet Security, I think it is. A lot of these organizations publish self-assessments. I haven't had time yet to work through those, but I would tell you my estimate is that we would not score very well on any of them. I think we have a pretty low maturity level, not casting any aspersions to anybody that's preceded me. I know that there's a lot of factors that go into how decisions are made over the course of time, but I would say that we've got growth to do, and I would say that the items that I've put before you in the budget requests that I've made are what I would consider baseline for the first year of a program. Now, I know that you're probably in your positions maybe thinking that sounds like in future years, I'm trying to prepare you for a lot more spend. That's not my approach either. I think that there are gaps here, and I'm trying to fill some of those gaps. And my effort will be to do what I can with the resources that are available to get us where we reasonably ought to be, given the constraints that we have over the course of years.
Mr. Chair, if we are going to be spending this kind of money, I would like us to go through those procedures first before we put this massive increase of expenditures. That will be the best course of action for us as a commission to have done before we expend this kind of money. Yes, it's good to be able to say, yes, it's likely that we'll score low, and I respect that opinion. However, sometimes you test and you find out things are better than they are. Sometimes you find out they're worse, but the taxpayer deserves to know what those levels are before we actually expend this significant amount of capital.
Thank you. I'm sensitive to the economic condition that we're in, yet also sensitive to the need to keep technology, especially security technology, updated. So it's kind of a challenging place to be this particular year. So I'd also like to continue the conversation and keep having you update us a little bit more what's exactly happening here. So perhaps we can become comfortable with explaining this to our folks back home.
Makes perfect sense.
Is that it for Mr. Butler? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Madam Treasurer, you are up.
So So the treasurer's office budget, the only line that has increased is salaries. That includes cost of living and step increases. All the other lines are either the same or I've tried to decrease to try to offset that increase. It's pretty basic.
That's it. Commissioner Rivera.
When, you said, I don't know if it was necessarily right when you started, but around the beginning of your tenure, we had a whole new slate of your two staff members over there. And we had talked a little bit about training and whatnot to get them to where they need to be and sort of continuous improvement there. Is this, what's in here of the $3,000, is that, is that you get train your two staff, including yourself?
And myself, yeah. There's a lot of the trainings that we were planning for this current year, but all got canceled because of COVID. So it is moving on to 2021, and hopefully they're gonna have them.
Good. Thank you very much. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Auditing. Anything furthermore on the auditing?
So auditing is to kind of talk to the auditor. It will stay the same, no increases.
Does this include the jail audit, or is?
Yes.
It does?
Well, no, that would be in the jail.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that, just a reminder, is that a similar price for the audit?
No, it's not, it's less. Yeah. I'm gonna, right off the top of my head, say I think it's about half.
All right, interest?
So interest, I spoke with my contact at Androscoggin Bank for some sort of guidance on what to do about the TAN interest. He indicated that based on what the treasury rates are right now, currently we're paying 2.28% on our TAN. And based on what the treasury rates are now, he told me that we would be safe if we put 1.50% in for the year. So I reduced that by $20,000. This year, we're gonna end up about under 60,000. So I think 80 will be fine. 80,000 next year.
Oh, you set the treasurer on the whole county?
It doesn't serve the taxpayer.
Okay, employee benefits.
So employee benefits. So the first line, medical, dental. Dental, we've heard they're not increasing for this next year. So medical, overall, it's increased about 5%. We have 3 positions that we needed to add in there: the trial assistant that the DA mentioned, and the 2 COPS FAST grant positions, as you recall, that was brought by the sheriff. Those will need to pick up the health insurance. And so adding that, and I increased it by about 3% overall. I really have no idea how much the rates will go up. I haven't heard, but that was just kind of a guess based on what our usage is and 3% and adding those 3.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner,
Ms. Parker, are you able to check with the groups? Obviously, they're not going to tip their hand, but I would figure healthcare costs are going to skyrocket as a result of all that's been going on this past year. I would figure that a lot of these insurance companies are going to be trying to recoup those costs. So I guess I'm just a little concerned that maybe 3% won't actually cover that. Obviously, I want to keep it as low as possible, but I'm afraid we'll probably need to see some massive hikes.
And that's another line where we really never know if they, what the employees are gonna pick for a plan either. So it's always a variable, you know, we don't, it's really a shock.
We get the increase percentage last of October, first of November.
Commissioner Christmas?
Well, no, that's what I was gonna say, is we get the actual number before we have to put a final vote on this. So we can adjust it at that point.
Auto insurance?
Insurance, we just increased slightly based on, you know, that's another one we don't get until later in the process. So I've increased it a little bit for a placeholder. We've upped it by 2,000.
So I think that there is some area here where we could just cut as a board, you know, for the Sutton Maine FERS as well. You know, we've got, you know, budget 45,000, we only had 38,000 last year. We budgeted 45,000, so far we're only at 34, and I assume it's because we've already prepaid most of the premium. So I'm assuming, am I incorrect, I'm assuming that there's some, you know, $5,000 here, $5,000 there.
In the benefits?
In the benefits, insurance, and some of these lines, because it seems to me that, I understand you don't know what health insurance people are gonna take, or whether or not they're gonna be part of the PLA or not.
As far as health insurance, I wouldn't recommend, because I really estimated low on that. I wouldn't recommend cutting that.
Okay.
The unemployment, 7,500, we don't usually spend a lot. We don't know usually, but we always budget the 7,500. Main FERS,
We used to budget 10,000.
Yeah, no, but I'm like talking also about like workers' comp where, you know, well, I'm sorry, not workers' comp, auto insurance. You know, it seems to me we could probably cut that down by a little bit. It's just a suggestion that if we're trying, again, if my goal is to try and cut out $370,000 worth of the budget, this is where I would be looking, going, okay, well, you know, just probably over budgeted. Obviously, for good intentions, right, you want to be conservative on your budget, you want, in terms of making sure that you have enough available. But, you know, you can cut out a little bit here, a little bit there, and it adds up.
it would make me nervous, but
Yeah.
it would be your decision.
Very good. Anything else? Not, any comments from, Commissioner?
Based on, and I'm not asking you specifics because I don't want to do that, but based on the experience ratings, especially with work comp, do you see any reason that our mod rate would go up or any reason for an increase?
I don't know. Any reason why it's going to go up?
No.
I don't know of any cases or anything.
Great, thank you very much. Any comments from the public? Yes.
Where should I go for that?
You come on up and visit us.
So, Alicia Ray, I live in Lewiston. So the conversation that unfolded tonight was a little different from the last budget meeting in terms of some folks looking for a 0% increase. Just as a Lewiston taxpayer myself, I just wanted to note that the only tax levy being assessed against me in the upcoming year comes from the county. And so, you know, the municipality and the school district both made an effort to bring it to 0%. And so I think some effort to move closer to that 0% would be well received, in my opinion.
Very good. Any questions for Alicia? Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair. Madam Ray, thank you for your comments. Thank you for coming. We appreciate that. Or I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure, Chair, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Third.
Third by, Mr. Kelly. Favor, all those opposed, it is unanimous.
I'm sorry, Larry.